Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this month's PatternFly community meeting. The last community meeting was also in May because of Summit pushing it out a little bit. So it's been a shorter amount of time than usual since our last update, which might mean this is a shorter meeting than usual, but we will see. After this meeting is finished, I will email out a link to the recording of this meeting, which I will post to YouTube, as well as a PDF form of all the slides, so you can access all the links and visuals from today. And yeah, I think that's the update. And today's, I put the link to the chat in the chat for the agenda and the slides for anyone interested. But without further ado, the first person on the agenda today is Abby, so I'm going to hand it over to her.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty, I am sharing the deck. Let me know if you can't see it. I have a super quick presentation today about some microcopy updates for the PatternFly design kit. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the kit, it's a sketch library that makes it easy for designers to create high fidelity mockups with PatternFly components. And most of the components contain microcopy, which is another term for the words that users see in the UI. It's the short form messaging within UI components like labels, modals, empty states, and more. And these components with their corresponding microcopy appear in a lot of different locations. Here are just 3 of them. They're used for images in design guidelines that you'll see on PatternFly. They're also referenced by UX professionals for examples of what components should look like and what microcopy should sound like. And they also make their way into product interfaces. A group of us on the PatternFly team work on design guidelines, and a lot of times when we revamp existing design guidelines, we find ourselves replacing images so that they feature microcopy that's aligned with PatternFly's standards. This is largely in part because a lot of those images were created before we even had before we even had microcopy standards on PatternFly. We also add content guidance to different design guidelines. So we create images and update images so that we can kind of feature those standards in action. And a small number of us might work on Red Hat product UIs, and we share feedback on how to improve the microcopy. And I realized that a lot of the microcopy is being modeled after the microcopy that people see on PatternFly. So this made me think that it makes the most sense to go right to the source, going right to the PatternFly design kit. I audited all the components in the PatternFly design kit, and I edited the microcopy in select components. Some of them were in really great shape and didn't need any work at all, whereas some of them needed a little bit more attention. I also worked with Marie, who's a designer on the PatternFly team, and she'll actually be presenting shortly. And she made all of the spacing and other design updates. When you change microcopy within the components, sometimes it can mess up with the layout and the spacing and just the overall look of the components. So she made sure all of that was straightened out. And she also helped to make sure that the edits were implemented and that the template is available up on PatternFly's design contribution page. So I definitely recommend going to that page and accessing the template to get the latest and greatest microcopy. These efforts will lead to less microcopy work for designers. When you're creating images in the PatternFly design kit, you don't have to worry about cleaning up the microcopy. Of course, you're free to change the microcopy however you see fit for your examples, but you don't have to worry about any outdated microcopy leaking out. This will also move us a little bit closer to having PatternFly compliant microcopy across design guidelines and product UIs. And it will ultimately help us move towards a clearer and more consistent content experience for users. Like I said, very short presentation. Thank you so much for listening. And I really hope that these updates help make your everyday work easier. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Let's see, next on the agenda is an update from design. I know Michael Saldonea has an update. Before I pass it all the way over to him, sorry, Michael. Before I pass it all the way over to him, I'm going to ask Marie if she has anything she wants to add about the design kit, because that would be an appropriate segue. And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share. And if you don't, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I have some updates, and I have a
Awesome.
slide there. Yeah, so I can share it. Or Michael, do you
Yeah.
want to go first, or?
No, I think it'd be great for you to go first, man.
Okay, so I'm gonna share. Can you see my screen? If you
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm gonna share some updates on our design kit. In our symbol library, we have new symbols for alert popover, and since we try to minimize nested symbols, which basically do the same thing, this popover has customizable background. It means that you can choose where you want to have the arrow and just hide other arrows in Sketch, which is great. The next thing is that we finally updated our labels in Sketch to reflect the current implementation. It means that all labels have 14 pixels text size. Then we have a new styling for a toggle group. It's available for gray and white background. Then we've added new icons that represents the closing and opening the catalog view panel. And when it comes to the template additions, we've added new variant of search with submit button, and we've added also optional finish button to wizard. And the last but not least is that we have 2 additional examples of form groups because we didn't have any real examples for this component. It wasn't really visible to users and designers. And the last update is that we've already minimized nested folders in a symbol library for 8 components, for example, for alerts, jump links, radio buttons, wizards, and so on. And if you think that some symbols are too nested and it's difficult to reach out to them, just let me know or open the issue for a design kit. And that's my update.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, now and back to Michael.
Okay. So I'm gonna just kind of introduce this look and feel refresh effort that we're doing and talk a little bit about how you can get involved if you'd like. I'm gonna actually point out when I switch slides just because I've still have issues with this. So let me know if the slides don't refresh. But I'll let you know. So I'm gonna go
I'm
through
not seeing a slide right now.
You're not?
No.
You're kidding
I
me.
did before you hit present, but I don't see one now. I see a blue blank screen. And if everyone else sees a slide except for me, you can let me know, but that's what I see.
Is it back to the slides now, or?
Nope.
Still blue for me.
Okay. I'm just
no,
gonna,
it's
it's just the blue.
I'm just gonna not worry too much. Okay. How about this?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to go through this. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go through the scope of the effort, give a quick example, talk about what I think are good first steps, or a little bit more than first steps. Some unknowns that are still open questions, and then a survey, which I'll talk about in a second. So what does this whole thing entail? It is not a brand new look and feel. The intention behind this is not to completely change the look and feel of PatternFly. So the outcome of this would not necessarily be like things looking completely different than what they do today. It's also not a major restructuring of components or interactions. That being said, if we do in our earlier research discover that a major restructuring is needed for a component or interaction, that could be spinned off as a separate effort. But for this, that's not really the main focus. What it is an evolution of current styles to keep PatternFly modern and ahead of the curve. So think of it as sort of like a lot less like going from PatternFly 3 to PatternFly 4, and more like a PatternFly 4 and 4.5, not in release terms, but in just conceptually. It's just an evolution. So it also, we're a lot more familiar with here at Red Hat how PatternFly is being used in our whole ecosystem of not only products, but also the entire customer user journey. So it has to work better with, we want it to work better with things like our brand styling, for example. So that means we want to build in more flexibility, more theming capabilities, and we also want the designs to be a little bit more compatible with other types of styling. And if we're having problems with this, it means that anyone is going to have a problem with this, with other trying to, convert PatternFly to work with their branding. So we definitely want to solve that and, keep that in mind while we're developing these styles. And then, of course, it's going to also be influenced by product feedback and community feedback. So, I'll get into that in a second with the survey that I'll bring up. That's kind of how we're going to gather all that feedback. So, just really quick, I want to give an example of kind of the magnitude of changes that we're kind of intending. So, this is just a screenshot from one of our table demos. And then I just went through and updated some stuff. Probably hard to see because of the screen size. Oh, that actually made it worse. And this is in no way a proposal of what it should be. This is simply an example of the magnitude of changes that we're looking at. So one thing that when I was doing this example, we've heard a lot of people providing feedback that they can, after upgrading to PatternFly 4, they see a lot less content on the screen. So in this case, we've got 3 visible table rows with 1 expanded. And so I tried to improve on that, and here I ended up with 1, 2, 3 expanded, 4, 5, 6 there. So that's the kind of stuff I think we're looking at, and then also looking at other systems like Carbon. I saw that they pull their toolbar out of the table and up into the page like that, so I thought, why don't we see how that looks? Again, this is more of an example and not necessarily a proposal, so don't get too hung up on the visuals here, but it's just an example of we're still going to look and feel like PatternFly, just evolve it a bit and iterate on it a bit to improve it where we can and where we see we need to improve it. So in terms of like first steps, the first thing we want to do is get feedback from the community, from products using PatternFly as well. So we're going to have a quick survey for anyone to fill out about pretty general opinions on PatternFly. It's not, we don't want to be too limiting here, and it's not only going to be focused on visual design. We simply just want to hear what people think about the current iteration of PatternFly and where they see, or you see, it could be improved. So then we're going to, in addition to that, we're going to audit or focus on the most used components first. So we actually have the ability to see, which components are being used more than others. And if there are any that really stand out, we really want to focus on those first to make sure we nail those down and have any changes that happen there sort of permeate throughout the rest of the system, and making sure that is compatible and works well. That, of course, any highlights from any feedback we get from the survey are going to be really important to us as well. So going to start there in terms of prioritization and outline some clear goals for each component. A good example of that from my last example is we want more table rows to be, or we want more rows of information to be visible with our data tables. Just clear goals like that, which again will be guided a lot by product and community feedback. So it's going to be really important that if you have any strong opinions about anything, please check out the survey, which again I'll get to in a sec. So we'll prioritize that way and then just start designing, and design will likely be pretty far ahead of development, but we're going to try to kind of go from there, I guess, and execute. So some unknowns. So while we were looking at a different kind of theming effort, we noticed that we wanted to kind of do a cleanup of our global variables, potentially even restructure them. So we don't really know when this would probably be good to coincide with that. We don't really want to change things too drastically and then have to rebuild our whole structure again. So likely this might coincide with that. And then there are going to be a lot of changes which are breaking changes, and some which are not as a result of this effort. So we kind of have to figure out how we want to approach that. So is this going to be one big breaking change release? Is this going to be something we roll out more sequentially or iteratively? I don't know, but those are still things we have to figure out. But right now, we're really focused on getting some feedback from the community, from internal and external products, community. This is going to have a huge impact on our prioritization and on the things we actually work on improving. So, like I said, all feedback regarding the whole user experience of PatternFly is welcome. I've got a link here. There's also a link in the agenda. I made my text really small, but there's a link to the survey in the agenda there. And I can also post a link in the Blue Jeans chat too, just for good measure. All right, that's it. Anyone have any questions, any thoughts? Cool. Well, thanks everyone. I'll post that link in a sec.
Thank you. And I will also send out the link with the slides in the email following the meeting as well. Hopefully we can keep it front and center in people's mind, get it in front of them so that everyone takes the time to do it and brings it back to your product teams or whatever to have all of them fill out the survey too. That'd be awesome. All right, let's see. Next on the agenda is a core update from Michael Coker.
Thanks, Nicole. Okay, so this is a pretty short one. We had a lot of bug fixes in the last month, so we have just a handful of new features and enhancements. So first off, in the avatar component, we got a couple of new variations for this. We have a light and a dark variation, and it adds a border that can help differentiate the avatar from its background, make it look a little bit better. So you have a light variation now that creates this border for use against light backgrounds, and a dark variation. And you can see this in the examples here. Up next, in the new menu component, we've added new positioning modifiers for use with flyout menus, so that instead of the flyout always popping out to the right and expanding down, as you can see here in the basic example, we now have the ability to have menus expand up. You can see this here with the alignment shown with the background. And then we also have the ability to expand these menus to the left. If there's no space available on the right side of the screen, you can expand to the left. And the really cool thing is you can combine them and have it expand to the left and to the top too. So all kinds of new possibilities with flyout menus coming out. And then last but certainly not least, with the new tree table implementation, we have worked on a really awesome responsive solution for that. And so you can see this now. It works just like existing table responsive modifiers, where you specify the breakpoint at which you'd like for the table to switch to the responsive view. And so you can see the desktop view here. And at a specified breakpoint, you get a mobile view. And the columns collapse very similar to the way that the default table columns do. So I'll just toggle that a little bit again so you can kind of see what happens. So that's pretty cool. And so that was a checkbox example, and this is just a regular tree table. So that's awesome. And that's also it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hey, Michael, this is James. So when you go down to the card view with and you have actions on the table, if you had an example where it had actions.
Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. In the responsive view, you have this action. Is that what you're referring to?
Right. So that right now in our view, we have a tree table we want to use, and we have an actions row. Each row has an action. And when it goes down to this view in the table view, in this view, that doesn't show the actions. It actually just expands that item. So if you click on the three dots.
Yeah, let me pull up, this is the core workspace. Let me pull up the React workspace because the core examples are
Okay.
all
Sorry,
static.
I don't mean to derail, but
It's okay. Appreciate your questions.
so if we, you find the one in here.
I think it's an example. I don't think it's under demos.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Do we have...
There's not an example with both actions and tree implementation, but it does.
Right.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
So we have one of these, a table that has row actions on it, and when it collapses down to this view, those row actions are not selectable anymore.
Okay.
Hey James, thanks for raising this. I opened a defect for this and I've tagged you both on Slack so we can take that offline and explore more.
Just something to be aware of.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks for bringing that up. We'll check out the issue. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Yes, our table is has a lot of features that we're constantly trying to make sure all interact with each other friendly. Thank you for pointing it out. We will investigate that. Next, we have a React update from Katie.
Yep, let me share my screen. Okay, so first up, we have a new part of the menu component, the menu toggle, as well as some demos that kind of link everything together. The menu toggle component itself is relatively straightforward. It's got some examples of showing you the different states. These don't do anything right now because they're not hooked up to anything. This is a separate toggle for the menu component. So you can see a collapsed state, which is a gray line, an expanded state, which is kind of a blue line. You can also disable it, add an icon inside the toggle, and as well as a badge with customizable text. And there are various styles for different kinds of plain and primary icons, just to customize the type of toggle you're going to be using. And then we also now have a new section in the demos section right down here for composable menu. And this demo basically hooks up the new menu toggle component with the menu component and a popper component, which we've exposed from our helpers, to kind of basically recreate like a drop down or a select, but using these more composable components, which gives you some greater customization. So you can see that this is just a basic with a toggle. We also have a simple menu with some actions and a select menu where you can see it's selecting and updating in the toggle as well. These are kind of basic examples, more will be coming as well. And these examples also have some custom keyboard and ally considerations. So if you have the menu open, it handles clicking off the menu to close it for all of these. So that's being done. And there's also keyboard. So if you say open a menu and you can now arrow down into it. And if you press escape, it will also close the menu. Same with if you're in a menu and you hit tab. And this works for all of them. You can also, with menu, navigate between items with your arrow keys, and it will skip disabled items, as you can see here. Tab to close, and for select, you can select with keyboard as well. Now that covers the new part of menu. There's also a kind of minor update. It's a little bit harder to show, but I wanted to cover it. We are working on making the apps more responsive for several things and more customizable. So as far as breakpoints, you can now customize toolbar width, gallery width, and drop-down alignment for different screen size breakpoints. So for instance, like for drop-down alignment, if you wanted it to expand from the left or the right, you can now customize that at large screen widths and small screen widths and have different directions. And that's it for me.
Awesome, thank you. We also have a React update from Michael Coker. I think. Did you know that, Michael? Maybe you didn't know that.
Yeah, I saw this on the agenda yesterday, and it did slip my mind today. But just one sec.
Okay.
Uh,
Sorry if I sprung that on you.
no, keeps me on my toes. Okay. So let's see. Toggle group component. So yeah, we got some really cool updates to the toggle group component. Um, it's got a bit of a visual refresh, borders around the items, new colors for the selected state. And so you can see this here. Looks really good. And then this also introduces a compact variant. And so you can see that at the bottom. And that's basically it.
I'll be sure. Usually I reach out to all of the people who have a React update and remind them that they're on the agenda. But this is your first React update, so I forgot that you wouldn't know that you would be on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. And also, I have a React update. Let's see. Let me make sure I have the right. Log viewer. All right, so another component that's new, it's beta. It's being iterated on very quickly. So is the log viewer. So in its initial introduction, we have a few features to highlight. The log viewer is a component for displaying basically logging output. And out of the box, it can come with a search feature, which will allow you to search the contents of the log viewer and navigate through the search results. It is virtualized, so that means it can contain large logs, and we are currently working this sprint on its responsiveness, so that's something to look forward to. We also have, it comes coupled with a toolbar that the consumer can define and implement other controls on the log viewer. And some of them, there are some more complicated controls that people have asked for that also may be coming down the pipeline shortly. So we would definitely encourage products to check out the log viewer to let us know if it meets their needs, if they have any questions, because like I mentioned, this sprint, upcoming sprints, we have a lot of slated work to improve upon and iterate on this log viewer. But yeah, this was kind of a whole team effort, so it's exciting to get to finally present it. But that's the only update I have for React today. Which brings us on the agenda next to a little segment that I'm calling Who's Who on in PatternFly development. Let me share this slide. Who's Who in PatternFly development. So what I'm going to do is we have a lot of people who regularly give updates as part of the PatternFly core and PatternFly React and PatternFly accessibility. And what I figured we'd do is just kind of get to know them a little bit better. So in the slides, I have a list of, I think, most of us, and I hope everybody on this list knows that they could get called on today to introduce themselves. And if they're on the call, then I will try to call on you, and you can always say I wasn't prepared, but you know, I think everybody was prepared. So we'll start with me. For anybody who doesn't know, my name is Nicole Thane. I am the PatternFly Scrum Master and a React dev. I a little bit to get to know me a little bit. Pre-pandemic, on a free weekend, you'd often find me playing outside with my kids for fun, or in the evenings, I do tend to, especially during the pandemic, play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. So there's an interesting fact about me. My favorite PatternFly component is right now probably I've been playing a lot with the date and time pickers, and they're still kind of in their infancy, but it's something I spent a lot of time working on so far, so I've enjoyed that. Usually I am somebody who's monitoring as best I can the PatternFly Slack channels, so I'm open to answering, or at least pointing anyone in the direction of the answer about anything PatternFly related. But I definitely have worked a lot on the toolbar components, on the code editor, most recently the date and time picker, and a lot on accessibility. So I enjoy answering questions about that. And I think that's all I've got for me today. But next, I'd love to introduce you to Matt Carrano. Matt, would you mind going through this prompt for me?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Currano. A lot of you probably already know me from speaking at these meetings. I am the PatternFly design lead, and also act as the Agile product owner, keep the roadmap, and manage priorities entering our sprint process. I've also been one of the few people who've been with PatternFly from day one. So it's been exciting to see the project grow over the past, I guess we're getting on like 6 or 7 years now that since we conceived the project. Pre-pandemic, on a fun weekend, you'd often find me sitting watching a Red Sox game at Fenway Park, which is something, I'm a big baseball fan, so something I always enjoyed doing, and have not been back yet. Last year, of course, there were no fans in the stands. This year they are having fans again, but I personally have not necessarily felt comfortable yet to venture out into that type of large crowd setting. So hopefully in the not too distant future, I can get back to that. Favorite component, that's a tough question. I think that's sort of like asking, do you have a favorite child? I love them all, but I do find that some are more troublesome than others. And I'm usually tagged to help answer questions about design. That's kind of my thing. Hand it off now. Titania looks like Titania is up next.
Yeah, hi. I'm Titania LeBay. I am the lead of the PatternFly React. Pre-pandemic, I guess you'd find me on a weekend. I like to work out, so you find me at the gym when not carting my children around to activities. I'm just spending time with the family, reading a good book now and then. Now I work out from home. But, my favorite component, similar to Matt, I don't really have a favorite component. Yeah, they're all special in their own way. And what I usually answer questions about, I generally answer just general questions about different components and triage issues and maybe point people in the right direction to get the answers they need. Sometimes they might ask a question that's more design related, then I'll, being mad about it, or if it's a CSS issue, I'll talk to Michael Coker. Yeah, that's about it for me.
maybe asking everybody their favorite component isn't fair, but if anybody feels strongly about it, you can let us know. No pressure. All right, let's talk to Michael again. Hi, Michael.
Hey, thanks. My name is Michael Coker. I'm the lead for the core side of PatternFly, so the HTML, CSS foundation for our components. Pre-pandemic, on a free weekend, you'd find me riding my motorcycle on various racetracks around Texas. There for a while, they were all shut down. They're starting to open back up, so I'm getting back out there, and luckily we're usually 6 feet away, so that's all good. But yeah, that's what I like to do for fun. My favorite component, gosh, if I would probably say it's kind of a love-hate relationship, but the table component, I think, which is very apt for the conversation we had today. Tables are so notoriously difficult to work with, especially with regards to styling. They have all of these quirks that just don't exist in other types of elements, and I think it's really amazing what we've been able to do with PatternFly's table. We have so many features and capabilities that it's been a real difficult challenge to get the table to where it is today. So very, very proud of the work that the team has done for such an integral element, I think, in product UIs for sure. And then I'm usually tagged to answer questions about CSS. That's it. Just people ask me about enhancements, if something's possible, if we have the ability to do something, if an issue that someone is reporting is CSS type of issue, or if it's something else. That's basically how I spend my days.
All right, awesome, thank you. And Katie.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Katie McFall. I'm a developer working on the React side for PatternFly. Pre-pandemic, I'd often be, I guess, just going out and hanging out with friends, going to see movies in actual theaters. During the pandemic, that's kind of moved to more virtual, watching with a couple of family members. But me and my friends have also been playing a Pathfinder campaign virtually, as well as some other online co-op things we can do. My favorite component changes often. At the moment, I've been working a lot on menu, and I'm really happy with what I did, so I probably like that right now. We'll echo that anytime anybody touches table, it's always such an achievement, and I always like touching it and be like, oh, it actually works, and it's great. I am usually tagged to help answer questions about some specific components if anybody has any questions to reach out to me, and those are select menu, dropdown, tree view, and application launcher. But any general React question I'll also be able to field, so feel free to reach out.
Sit on next to Jessie.
Hey, so my name is Jessie Huff. I am the accessibility lead and also a React developer. Pre-pandemic, you would probably find me in an in-person yoga class, which doesn't seem to happen anymore, or maybe hiking. I love getting outside. And then my favorite component is actually what I consider like an unsung hero, which is the skip to content component. I think a lot of people forget about it because it's a simple component, but it helps so many people, because if you are a keyboard user, you might get super annoyed that every single page you have to get through the entire navigation, and this one simple component can make your life so much easier by going straight to the content. So I think a lot of people forget about the skip to content, but I think it helps people, and so it's one of my favorites. And then I'm usually tagged to help answer questions on accessibility.
All right, awesome, thank you. Next up is Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Chatrala, and I'm an intern working on PatternFly and accessibility. Pre-pandemic, on a free weekend, you could either find me playing Pokemon Go for fun, because I used to be in the competitive battling scene, or playing a Quiz Bowl tournament if there was one, because I'm on my school's Quiz Bowl team and I love trivia. My favorite component is probably a slider, just because it reminds me of my very first hackathon project, which was a website color scheme generator that used sliders for color input. And then I'm usually tagged, well, I'm not usually tagged to help answer questions, but in theory, I would be usually tagged to help answer questions about accessibility and PatternFly core stuff.
Oh, don't worry, Bonnie. I'm sure the time will come. You'll get tagged plenty. All right, next up is Matt Nolting.
Hey everyone, Matt Nolting, principal software engineer slash front-end developer, and I work primarily on the PatternFly core side. Pre-pandemic, what did I do? Hard to remember. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and they're like free weekends are kind of like, what is that actually, a free weekend? So it was everything, museums. I think that what that question is driving at is like, what were you able to do then, or what can you do now that you weren't able to do then? And it's like, okay, well, just like taking your kids to a restaurant and so you don't have to clean up dinner is the most wonderful thing that you appreciate, pre and post pandemic. So yeah, just like outside stuff, playing tennis poorly, trying to hike and just get out of the house is really pre and post pandemics. So my favorite component is actually I think it's the Flex layout. I know it's kind of, it's not a typical component, but I use it most. And for me, it solves a bunch of problems that it helps me avoid writing a bunch of custom CSS. So that's my favorite one to use. And what am I usually asked about? Toolbar, primarily, with Nicole. Tree view with Katie, and then the table with Coker. I think I would put that. That's it.
Awesome. All right, next up is Zach.
Oh, hi, Zach Allen here. I'm a React dev, and pre-pandemic on a fun weekend, you'd find me doing the same thing I do now, which is biking or hanging out with friends. Favorite component is Avatar because it's the easiest to maintain. It's I think it's like 10 lines of code, 2 props, and it should stay that way. I'm so happy it's that way. Usually tagged to help answer questions about build problems and difficult React issues where React doesn't work well, and then we have to dive under the hood with refs to do stuff with vanilla JavaScript.
All right, thanks, Zach. And last but definitely not least, Evan.
Hey everyone, Evan Wilkinson here. I'm the manager of the PatternFly team, and I've been with Red Hat for about a year and a half. Pre-pandemic, you'd find me with my wife and my dog, probably checking out some new local breweries in Raleigh. We didn't realize when we moved here how many there were, and so it seems like there's always a new place to go. Favorite component, I'm going to go with my first component that I built, which was the overflow menu. And I remember when I was building it, and as soon as I got it finished and I was feeling accomplished, Zach came along and said, "Congratulations, it's yours forever now." So you kind of grow old with your components because if any questions come up, you're the first one to lean in and say, "I did that, so let's figure that one out." And usually tag to help answer questions about connecting teams. So we've partnered with a couple different teams who are ramping up with PatternFly recently. And it's been really great kind of getting to meet some more developers across Red Hat. Also, I've kind of dabbled a little bit in React and the PatternFly org repo. So kind of a lot of random issues that come up across those. And most recently, I'm starting to pick up some more basic core PRs, and I'm excited to ramp up there and kind of learn from Michael and Matt a bit more, so we can all go in and most recently am asked questions about why did you come up with this idea about introducing ourselves on the community call. So thanks everyone for participating and playing along, and everyone for attending today.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And next on the agenda and last on the agenda is an update from Matt Carrano about what we are working on. And I will let you share the screen for this if you'd like.
Okay, I can grab the screen share and see. Okay, so everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. Some things were large things we're working on in design. The visual refresh, Michael talked about that earlier in the meeting. So that's something that we will be starting to work on this summer. Task drawer, Gina Doyle's been working on a design to use the existing notification drawer to also report status of running tasks. Scalable vertical navigation. I've been working with a small team of people to look at our vertical navigation, look at, I think we're finding that we currently support a 2-level accordion navigation, but that is probably not sufficient for some of our newer use cases where we're looking to nest multiple applications into a single console. So we're taking a look at that. Stepper component, which will allow you to reflect the progress or navigate through sequential tasks. Laura writes, currently looking at rethinking the selected states for tiles and cards. We found recently that with some of the changes that Google has made in the Chrome browser, where they unfocus, put a blue outline around elements, it gets very confusing since we were also using that blue border to indicate selection for tiles and cards. It becomes very confusing to know what is focused versus what is selected. So we're trying to rethink that approach visually, and then also working on some tree view enhancements to better support trees with increased content density. So as always, you can visit our PatternFly design workspace to see a complete list of what we have in our backlog. I should also note that every other week we have a PatternFly design share meeting where we do a deeper dive into some of these designs and give folks a chance to provide direct feedback on ongoing design work. The next meeting is tomorrow morning Eastern time, and if you are not already on the invite for that meeting and would like to be, just reach out. Feel free to reach out to me, and I can add you. In terms of on the development side, the core team has been working on refactoring of our masthead to create a more responsible, flexible masthead component. We'll be working on a new secondary horizontal navigation component that should be replace the existing tertiary nav, where we've gotten a lot of feedback that is perhaps too similar to our tab component. We've been kind of had an ongoing effort to look at theming. We're currently working on introducing a new component. It's real-time form field validation. We're actually introducing a new component called a helper text component, which allows us to provide sort of richer helper text that could be attached to a text input field to reflect different types of validation criteria, introducing a password strength meter to our login form, and also the ability to expand and collapse inline alerts. Those are all things that have been asked for from different projects. And on the React side, Nicole earlier mentioned the log viewer. We do have some stories to do some continued enhancements to that component. We're introducing a new set of list variants, including plain lists, lists with separators, lists with leading icons, adding the ability to click on labels in a description list to pop up. On-demand info tips, introducing a danger variants for our secondary and link button. Right now we have a primary danger variant, but we had requests for being able to provide a secondary danger button as well. And also fulfilling a request to allow wizard substeps in our the wizard side panel to be collapsible to save some space for wizards with a large number of steps. You can visit our PatternFly feature roadmap again to see our complete feature backlog and see we are probably planning at this point about 6 months out, so you can kind of see into Q3 and Q4 where we have features on our roadmap. That's a kind of big picture highlight. Any questions on that or anything you'd like me to drill into further? Okay, well, all of these items are linked in the deck to the corresponding GitHub issues. So certainly you're welcome to follow any of those issues and add any comments, and the PRs will also show up there once we have open PRs on any of these development items. So thank you, and I'll send it back over to Nicole.
All right, awesome. Thanks, everyone. We have a couple minutes if anybody has any questions for the team or anything they want to say or present quickly, I guess. So I'll give everyone a moment if you have any questions. All right, sounds good. Okay. All right, thanks everyone. Like I mentioned before, be on the lookout for an email including the slide deck, a link to the survey talked about earlier, and a recording of this presentation. And yeah, if anyone has any suggestions for updates or presentations that they'd want to see next community meeting, definitely reach out to me in the meantime. I hope everybody has an awesome month in the meantime. Thanks.